Good morning and welcome back to Cheyenne, Wyoming Urban Gardener. This is Debbie, and we are out here bright and early on July 16th because I wanted to go through a little bit of the garden with you. Kind of a garden tour just to let you know an update on things that are going on out here in the garden. And again, we're in Cheyenne, Wyoming, gardening zone 5A/5B. This year it's been very much the 5A because it's been cold soil temperatures. Everything is a little bit later than it was last season. Last season we had things in the ground about 2 to 3 weeks earlier than we have this season, but everything is catching up quite quickly. We've still got about 50 days of grow time until our first frost. Here in Cheyenne, Wyoming, we can start getting frosts in September and then even snow in September, sometimes even earlier than that. The earliest snow that we've had since I've been here for 7 years has been around September 9th, so it can be pretty early. Anyway, this is the watermelons that we have out here and cantaloupes and things like that, and we've got a converted kiddie pool with strawberries and watermelons both in there, as well as some basil and some rosemary. We're kind of a companion plant, quite a few things around in the garden. And we've got some of our tomatoes out here as well. I'm not sure that some of the watermelons will catch up, even though they're larger plants now and they're blooming. It is getting a lot later in the season for watermelons and cantaloupes and things like that, but they are doing their best. But these watermelons, this one in particular, does have a watermelon on it. I'm not sure if you can see it in there. I do see it on the shot a little bit. So that one did set, and it's already about the size of my hand. So that one will most likely come on through, and I think this one is one of the sugar babies or maybe a crimson sweet. We did not have a tag in there with that one, but it is definitely getting some size on it very quickly, and there are some more that are setting on there, and I'm even seeing some bees pollinating right now throughout. We've had a little bit of an issue as well this season with a lot of the male flowers blooming at a different time than the female flowers are blooming, so that can be a bit of an issue with pollination. So sometimes you have to come out here when the male flowers have withered a little bit and try to pollinate with that withered flower onto the female flower. But that one did set, and I think we've got some more on there that are trying to set. And of course we've got tomatoes on all of our tomato plants so far. There's only a couple of tomato plants that do not have tomatoes set on them, and that's the Kellogg's breakfast tomatoes, and they seem to be a lot slower than a lot of the other tomatoes. And here's our cantaloupes. We have some little tiny cantaloupes in there. Lots of blooms. They have not pollinated yet, but they've always been a lot slower to me, even the watermelons. So we will see what happens with those. But then again, if you think about it, we've only had these in the ground or in the soil since the around June 2nd, even a little bit later with some of these cantaloupes. So they have definitely not had very long grow time so far. So we will probably be going into August before a lot of these cantaloupes will set onto the vines, but the vines are all extremely healthy. Again, the only issue that I've had has been the soil, the difference between Schultz soil and Master Garden soil, which is Master Garden is typically the one that I get. And I had to resort to some Schultz soil and even one bag of Miracle Grow soil. And that is this soil right here. And as you can see, there's a huge difference between these cucumbers and these cucumbers, and that's Master Garden soil. These cucumbers already have cucumbers coming up on them. These right here were planted at the same time that these two were. And you can see how much further these two have gotten. And even though we have Schultz soil in one of these containers, The other one is Master Garden Soil, and you can see a huge difference between these cucumbers and that cucumber. But definitely a huge difference with this one. And this one is a smaller pot than the other two, so it will be a little bit slower on that aspect. But the soil is what is really making a huge difference in this. And that's a cucumber plant there. We've actually got 3 cucumber plants in there. That is the spring burpless variety, and they are just massive plants because they are a little bit shorter season, come on very quickly. They were supposed to actually have cucumbers in the spring, but unfortunately we do not get much of a spring here in Cheyenne. We basically get 2 seasons, really, winter and summer. Their falls are very, very, very short. Springs are sometimes even shorter. So when we get fall, it usually starts happening in the latter part of August and then ends pretty much by the end of September. And then the rest after that is pretty much winter. So anyway, we've got some Space Master cucumbers back here, and they're a smaller leaf size, but they are definitely getting ready to put on some cucumbers. And then there is our converted kiddie pool with all of the goodness in it. We've got some basil in there, and I did go ahead and break off the tops on the basil yesterday, and they already threw up 2 more tops on each one of the plants, so they will become a lot more bushy. So I need to get in here again and actually snap off the second little helping of basil, I guess, and get that drying. And of course we've got our watermelons in here. These are doll baby watermelons and Klondike watermelons. So they're an early variety and a cold hardy variety. Even though they would still get killed in a frost, they're a lot quicker to get ready than some of the other watermelons. And they have been in about 3 to 4 weeks later than the other watermelons through here. So they are just now putting up their runners and starting to bloom. But I do look forward to seeing some watermelons on those, because once they set, the watermelons are actually smaller than some of the other watermelon varieties that we have. The doll babies are basically a personal size watermelon, and they can be an assortment of any color. They can be orange, pink, yellow, or red. So looking forward to seeing those. And then of course we've still got strawberries like crazy in here. I've been pulling a few off every day. Not a huge amount, but we do have strawberries that are still going very strong. We've got the mountain strawberries in here, as well as a variety called Seascape strawberries. And in my experience so far, the Seascapes have not been as prolific as the mountain strawberries have been. I was a little surprised. I thought the mountain strawberries would only bear during June and be done, but they've actually been bearing the entire time. So very cool on those. And here's another watermelon. We've got some little watermelons on it trying to get set. Like again, the plants are extremely healthy. I just woke up a little bit ago, so I'm a little bit all over the place right now. But I try to get out as early as I can. Right now it's about 6:30 in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. I haven't looked at the clock yet, but it's pretty early. We're out here just checking over everything. We got a really good rain last night, late in the evening last night. So everything got to be naturally watered versus me watering it with a hose and it being chlorine water. So everything perks up a whole lot when you have natural rain. And then, of course, we've got peppers set on some of our pepper plants. We've got pepper plants through here as well. And that is the Big Jim, very hot pepper. And I've got it sitting over here. And the rest of the peppers are in the main garden because I don't want them crossing, which will happen sometimes with hot peppers and sweet peppers together. Now, this barrel planter, which is not really a barrel, it's just a really big planter, has just had an amazing amount of growth on the cantaloupes and cucumbers and white Crenshaws that I have going on in here. And you can see the leaves are massive. and they are getting their runners. You can see the little tendrils kind of laying around on some of the leaves, but they are huge, and they were planted even later than the doll babies, so they will take a little while to come on, but I don't expect it'll be too long because the plants are just so massive. So there's about 9 plants in here. I planted basically a handful in 3 sections within the pot. So there are 3 white Crenshaws, 3 white spine cucumbers, and 3 Sharon-Tay cantaloupes in here. And all of them are just massive, huge runners. And I've kept them fertilized. So we have organic Job's fertilizer in here as well as some compost. And also have been hitting it with a water-soluble fertilizer as well, and the plants are just massive. And of course I'm hitting the water soluble fertilizer with all of the plants, and but I have just not seen as much action as I've seen with these. And anyway, looking back at those spring burpless cucumbers that we were going over, the massive cucumber plants, I was seeing a lot of blooms down in there. Look at that. And pretty little blooms. Well, actually, they're not really little. They're quite big. So, definitely got a lot of blooms in there. You can see all the blooms on the cantaloupes over here. That's the Ball 2076. And then, no blooms yet on these, but they are very, very shortly to bloom. I can see some bloom heads down in there. And you can see some the tendrils, as well as you can see some blooms getting ready to start on there. Even our tarragon is branching and bushing out now. So, and of course here in the morning there's always something going on. We've got trains beside of us. There are some railroad tracks basically across the highway from us. And people coming through on all sorts of things, motorcycles, everything. It's summertime, so everyone's enjoying the weather. We're getting ready for Cheyenne Frontier Days here in Cheyenne, Wyoming. Of course, it's a huge rodeo and all of that. And that's getting up and going. We've got about, I think it's next weekend that everything starts up. This weekend they're doing the trials, which are called slack. That's going on out here. So just all kinds of things going on here in Cheyenne. Of course, we've got some Space Master cucumbers over here. And I have basically 3 plants. 3 there, 3 there, 3 there. So I need to get in here and thin those so they can really get going, and I'll put those in some pots and then just put a listing on one of the groups, and someone will definitely come and pick those up because they're nice healthy plants. And the Space Master cucumbers do not get very big. They're more of a bush variety of cucumber. They do run a little bit, but not a whole lot, and someone will enjoy those because we can't have 9 plants in that small of container. We've also got some snapdragons in there that I had planted and totally forgotten about, so we do have those in there as well, and we need to get those thinned out so that way those can actually bloom. Our sun gold cherry tomatoes, or sun sugar, I always forget the name on those. Those are getting ready to bloom as well. These were much later tomato plants. And we've got some blooms getting ready to happen on those and get those set up. And then, of course, we've got another yellow pear tomato over there with lots of yellow pear tomatoes on it, and it just keeps getting taller and taller. These stakes that I have in these are about 5 feet long, so we just keep tying them up, but eventually we're going to run out of stake, to be honest, and then I'll let them just bush out. Got some more cucumbers going on here. We planted the burpee pickler in here 3 days ago. Actually, these are 5 days old now. So we planted those in there. They've all came up, and I'll just leave them as they are. They don't need thinned or anything. There's only 2 plants in each pot, and those should start off pretty quick. Pickling cucumbers usually do not take very long. They're kind of like an earlier season variety, and these are supposed to be ready in about 45 to 50 days anyway, so they should really take off on growth very soon. Surprisingly enough, we still have alyssum through here, which is kind of interesting. We've got this one looks like it is going to seed a little bit. the pink one. The white one hasn't even thought about it, but lots of stuff going on with that still. Our lettuce in our container is getting quite healthy and big now. Pretty soon we'll be picking some of that. And of course we still have the lettuce over here. I have not pulled it out yet. I found that if I just take the leaves when I pick them and just submerge them in cold water, they sweeten up. You can't even tell they have any bitterness to them. So we've just went ahead and left them in here and continue to pull leaves off of them. And they are looking beautiful still, even throughout all of the heat that we've had. Parsley, we planted some more parsley in here because it was a little spotty over in this section, and all of those have came up. Right there you can see them, and they will start getting on some size pretty soon. And this is the triple curl parsley. This is one of my favorite varieties of parsley because it always seems like that there's more to it than there is with some of the other parsley, and I like the flavor too. We still got lots of blooms going on our Gabbera daisy. Again, this is purple. It shows up as pink on my camera for some reason, and any camera that I've used so far it shows up as pink, and it's really purple. I need to deadhead some of those. And our hibiscus is still just blooming like crazy. We've gotten them transplanted into the clay pots. We did that a little while ago, and I actually planted some cucumbers all around them. So we've got some burpee pickler cucumbers around those, and one of them is up, and it was up in 3 days. So we've got a couple of more. Looks like another one's coming up, and then we've got some in the other container as well. Again, trains. That's our butter dish squash. Even though I've got it transplanted now into some better soil, it's still struggling because of how stunted it was being in that Schultz soil. So I'm not sure it's going to actually do anything or not, but we did get some planted in the herb garden patch, and those should be up in the next couple of days. And again, it is a short season variety as well, so about 45 to 50 days it'll be mature and producing, so we should have plenty of time for that. And the other two hibiscus that we transplanted, and I forgot that these pots are actually Monrovia plant pots, so not Monroe, Monrovia. So we've got our hibiscus in there. They greened up so much, and then have started blooming again. And all of our plants still back here. We've got some actually blooming of the celosia that I had pulled out of the other pots, and I've been giving those out to people. We've got some blooms happening on one of the borage plants, so these are supposed to be picked up very soon by a girl I've been coordinating with. And of course our mints are still doing amazing. And then this is the second main garden plot, and loads of growth on our corn. We've got corn tasseling right now, and of course it'll get about 2 feet taller with the tassels, and it's just looking amazing, absolutely amazing. Nice healthy corn. Of course we still have the shading issue in the back section of the corn. That corn is just now really kind of starting to put some size on it. But they are catching up. They're catching up with everything else. So that is a good thing. We've got runners on our beans. You can see the beans back here because the corn is shorter back here. So the beans have started blooming and also having runners on them. And the Royal Burgundy beans is the same situation. These are massive Royal Burgundy bush beans plants. They've actually turned out to be more of a running type than what we expected, but massive plants. They're doing great. They're almost like 3/4 the size of some of the largest corn, so doing really well. Our nasturtiums are doing really well, surprisingly, in so much shade that they're getting back here, but they seem to be just getting up to where the sun is and just doing amazing. And I need to get in here and do some weeding. I see a dandelion in there. And all of our zinnias are getting ready to bloom. They've got their bloom heads on them. Once they do bloom with the first bloom, I will go ahead and pinch that off. And then they will shoot up 2 more bloom heads. So we should have loads and loads of zinnia blooms in here. These are the California varieties, so they're really massive size. We've got some more zinnias here, and then some more here. So we've got so many flowers this year, this season in the garden versus what we had last season. We just had basically calendula and sunflowers. This season we've got loads. We've got asters, we have bachelor's buttons, we have snapdragons, we have zinnias of all different varieties, calendula, and some different things. We've planted some alyssum. We've planted a whole bunch of different flowers all throughout the garden this season. So you're not going to see as many huge sunflowers as I had last season because I've decided to kind of scale back from the enormous sunflowers. I've got some in here, but they're just not huge yet. But we've decided to plant more sunflowers, but of a shorter variety. So we've got incredible sunflowers and Chianti sunflowers and an autumn gold variety and a lemon something variety, and we've got the teddy bear ones. So we've got a whole bunch of different ones in here that are more of along the size of 4 to 5 feet or 24 inches or 36 inches. So when they bloom, I'll show you what they turn out to be like. Our Guido Cossaman squash is taking off like crazy. It looks like that it might actually do something. We've actually got a runner in the middle section right there that's just started. So I hope that they do get to do something. We've got one radish that ended up over here with them, and they're heading up nicely. I've got finally going to have some radishes in here. And I have radishes all along in this section, and they're heading up nicely as well. And here are the Kellogg's breakfast tomatoes. And again, they are just now starting to get some blooms. Just on the two largest of the plants, I've got 2 large plants there and then one smaller one. The smaller one is not unhealthy or anything. It's just smaller for some reason. It was smaller when it germinated and everything, and this is seed that I started. But it is doing fine. It's just that it's a little bit shorter than the other two. And they do have blooms on them, and I think I'm starting to see some blooms on the short one, but they should have some tomatoes on them, and I just keep tying them up as they get taller, but they're a lot slower than some of my other tomato varieties, even the giant ox hearts. My grandson's little garden area is doing fantastic. The only issue that he's had is some lemon basil that he had planted originally, and I think it was just too cold at the time, never really did more than that. Now this is lemon basil here, and you can see the size is much bigger and in a very, very short amount of time. So those two are just stunted, and I'll probably pull them out. He's got a couple of cucumbers in here that are not doing so well. And again, this was Schultz soil, so that's why it's probably not doing very well. But it did better over here in this section than it's doing in here. So it's just what it is. His tomato, though, has tomatoes on it, and his little broccoli plant is looking very nice. And he has blooms on his pepper plants, which he's so excited about. And all the Kennebec potatoes are just about done blooming now, and they are starting to die back at the bottom parts in here, but there's still plenty of green on them, and we will not harvest these until we see the plants start to die back, which they never did last season. But I think this season they will, because last season they didn't actually bloom. They were all ready. We had potatoes and all that, but they just did not bloom. And this season they did. So I think that the plants will start dying back. The only ones that have not bloomed have been back here in the shaded section, but they do have bloom heads on them. So they will be blooming very soon. And we do have a couple of stragglers in there that are just bloomed a little bit later. But most of them have already bloomed and gone. And so it means we should have potatoes in there, but we'll just wait till they die back before we harvest. Our eggplants are looking quite nice in here, and they're just not, they're a lot slower than some of the other plants. Looks like I am getting some bug damage in here on some of the sunflowers, so I'll need to figure out what exactly is causing that. Again, it may be ants, because we've had a lot of ant issue with biting leaves this year. So you can see that, and I'm not seeing any pest. You just kind of flip up the leaves and things to see if you can find the pest. So it looks like to me it's probably ant damage from ants biting the leaves. But they should not affect the sunflowers unless it completely just skeletonizes the leaves or something. But no, I'm not seeing any particular insect that's a trouble, so it's probably ants coming up here and getting water out of the leaves. It looks like they are not touching the eggplants, which is a good thing. Any damage that you see on the eggplants is actually from me coming in and disturbing the soil and fixing the soil and stuff like that. So you can see that one's nice and healthy. So hopefully we'll get some eggplants. Beans are running now. We've got lots of beans climbing the trellises. Some of them just started with the runners, but even the rattlesnake pole beans are now catching up. So that is exciting. I get to see some actual rattlesnake pole beans. I've not actually grown those before, so looking forward to that. We've got a couple of cucumbers that are tucked in here just because, and they are getting some size on them as well, so hopefully we'll get some cucumbers out of those. We have a lemon cucumber over next to the Kellogg's breakfast tomatoes that we were just at, and that one is doing amazing. So we do have beans. We had one of our first beans last night, but I need to get in here and pick the rest. On the bush beans, we have loads and loads of beans going on, and I may actually resort more to bush bean type next season than the pole beans, because the pole beans just take so long, and the bush beans are usually ready way before the pole beans. So that's what the bush beans and pole beans look like right now. The half runner beans are already up the trellis and keep climbing, and they are doing way better. So I think next year I'm just going to do half runner beans and bush beans, and probably those royal burgundy beans because they look amazing. Tomatillos, we have tomatillos set on the plants now. You can see maybe them hanging in different places. We still have peppers on the plants over here. I did get a little bit of some sun scald on one of the peppers, but the other two look great. And then they've got more peppers coming on. And the tomatoes even back here looking amazing and starting to get bloom heads on them. So all the tomatoes looking great except for the two that I have that I think have blight, and I still haven't pulled them out just because it's kind of difficult to get in the garden now. But I'll get those pulled out and replaced once I have some more that are going. So we've got an Armenian cucumber in here, and you can see that in between these two, and it's definitely starting to get a runner, and I've even seen a bloom on it now. So that will be something interesting. I haven't gotten those to go really well here before. Our onions are getting some size on them now. We're definitely getting heads on some of the onions, you can see down in there. And I got a new onion hoe that, let me show you. So there is our onion hoe, and you can see it's very narrow and pointed, and this has been a game changer for me. This will go in between each one of the onions, even though I have mine probably planted a little closer together than a lot of people just because of the space that we have, but those go in between each of the onions, no problem, and scrapes the soil away from the onion bulbs. And that is the trick to getting large onions, is the less soil the better up around the bulb, so that way it does get headed up and doesn't have any constrictions with the soil. So you just go in there, scrape the soil away from the bulb, and it'll start bulbing up. I have not mentioned very much about the hanging pots or hanging planters that we've done. I had a bunch of black petunia seeds and I planted those, and you can see all of the little seedlings are up for black petunias, and they should just keep getting some size on, and they'll start blooming very shortly. Once they start, I've noticed it only takes a couple of weeks, and they turn from that into plants that are this size, and then just keep going from there. And these are some that I transplanted in here. Should also be black petunias that had just came up in a pot that I had some cucumbers in. So I went in and transplanted those out along with some celosia. You can see the celosia here, and the celosia starts blooming very quickly. You can see even as tiny little plants, they're starting to bloom, and they will just keep getting bigger from there. So we've got several of these little planters like this with plants in them. This one gets a little bit more sunlight, so it has bloomed already. This one turned out to be pink, and then we have another one that turned out to be purple. These come from a separate plant pot, and you can see some of the blooms on the celosia and some more petunias in there. So that is what I'm going to do from now on, is just collect my own seed off my petunias and plant it, because it's really super easy. And this is one of the planters that we had picked up some plants and just threw in some of them. I really loved these little pink guys here, and tossed those in there with some of the pansies of different color varieties. And then we have a couple of the celosia plants that I transplanted out in here as well, and they are starting to bloom. So anyway, we're going to go into a part 2 of what's going on. We will see you in the next video.